What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to tell you guys the story of me and the PlayStation 3, 15 years in the making. No, it's been 15 years. You know, we've celebrated games like Infamous that has just turned 15. Last week, we just celebrated Prototype, which turned 15. I thought, you know what? The PS3 really did define me. You know, in terms of me being a gamer, it's really where I grew up. You know, I've talked about kind of my history before, but I want to go over the history of getting the PS3, some of the highlight games, whether they be first party or third party, and just talk a little bit about how, yeah, the PS3 really did make me. When I think of the BioShocks or the Assassin's Creeds or any of these games that have become, you know, something, it all originated for me playing it on the PS3. So, you know, like I said, it really all starts with Prototype. You know, I told a little bit of the story last week, but, you know, my cousin had shown me the trailer for Prototype, and it just looked like the greatest thing of all time. Now, before then, you know, I was playing the Sly Coopers, and I had Sims. Like, Sims 2 was a game I sunk hundreds and hundreds of hours in. But, you know, besides games here and there, you know, I had handhelds, so I'd play like Pokemon and whatnot. Crash Bandicoot, of course, Crash Bash being probably one of my all-time favorites. I wasn't caught up. You know, I had a PS2. I had, you know, I've experienced the God of War games just a little, actually more like at friends' houses. I mainly played those Sly Cooper-esque type games. So he shows me Prototype. I'm 12 years old, and I say, oh my dear, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life, literally technology-wise. I thought it looked like a cool concept, and later Prototype became one of my favorite games of all time. But I thought, okay, well, how do I get this thing? And he said, well, you got to get a PS3. Now, he had a PS3. My friends actually had the 360. Now, I had played the Halo games and even some Gears, you know, kind of cooperatively with them over time, but I actually chose to get the PS3. So I got the fat PS3, and I don't have it actually physically to show you. The system that I've been playing, Infamous, Prototype, all these PS3 era games that we've been doing on the channel, it's actually my wife's. My fat PS3 is still actually at my parents' house, obviously where I used to live, and it's still going strong. It's still there. My dad plays it from time to time. 15 years old. I love the fat PS3. I think that thing is a work of art. I do prefer the slim. I mean, I had it. I think that's also there for some reason. Maybe my sister took it. I don't really know why I don't have my original PS3, but, you know, those are at my parents' house. That's okay. We have a PS3 replacement, and, you know, I get it. And, okay, well, this really is what starts to define me, right? I get the bundle. I buy with my own money. You know, I've told that story before. And I'm doing this kind of for a birthday because I'm getting it for Prototype. Prototype came out like June 7th or June 9th or whatever it is. And my birthday is June 28th, right? So I'm saying, okay, well, for my birthday or even just to get Prototype, I'm getting the PS3. So I get a bundle. I spend, I think, 300-ish of my own money. My sister puts like 100, and maybe my dad puts 100. It was some sort of split like that, but I put a lot of money into it. And, you know, we get it. And it comes with Resistance, and it comes with MotorStorm. Now, it made me a fan, I would say, both those franchises. You know, MotorStorm I actually think is one of the more underappreciated, whatever you want to call them, racing. I think it is a racing game, right? I love Apocalypse. I love the original MotorStorms. Those two games come along, and I mean, eventually, and we'll talk about those, right? But I got it for Prototype. So I also get Prototype, and a funny part to the story that I don't know how often I've told this, there was some sort of issue with the PS3 when I first got it, and I've never had anybody be able, maybe you guys can do it here, I've never had anybody be able to explain to me the problem that I had with the PS3. So I'm at school, my dad actually sets it up, so I have a personal, you know, profile, and I also have the Podcast Now one. The personal profile, it was actually named from my dad. My dad actually came up with the name. So I have that, and it eventually becomes just a staple of thousands of trophies and many platinums. I'm very proud of the trophies I have on that system and just the profile in general. So I come home, and I'm ready to play Prototype. You know, we had school, like, through June. So at this time, we were still in school. We were still doing, like, finals or whatever. So, okay, I try to do it, and it will not let me. The PS3 would not let me play Prototype. It would be in it, and we didn't know any. My cousin was the only one that really knew. So we were like, well, I don't know what to do. I spent hours. I mean, the internet was slow, all this jazz. So I don't know how to work this thing. Like, I actually feel like I started to tear up, you know, because it's like I spent hundreds of dollars. This was a game in Prototype that I've been wanting to play since my cousin showed it to me. The whole point was to play it, and I literally can't play the PS3. So I do think I started to get emotional, which is not all that surprising for me. But eventually, I either saw it on Google or I saw something. You have to play, at least I did. I had to play a demo to like trick the PlayStation into doing something to then allow me to play games. I am not kidding. This is not an exaggeration. This is not a joke. It would not let me play a game. It would not. I would put the disc in. It would say whatever the error message was. It was an actual error message, and I literally downloaded. So I downloaded The Chronicles of Narnia: Prince Caspian, which I did see that movie. I actually liked those movies growing up, but I downloaded the demo, and I played the demo. I played it for like 15 minutes. I've never played that game, and you know what? Thinking about it for this video, I want to get that game, and I actually do want to play it because it's weirdly important to my history with the PS3. It was a requirement that I played a demo. Just so happened to be that one, but it was a requirement. So I played it, and I was like, this is fine. And then finally, I click on Prototype in the menu. It opens and actually starts playing. And same way I can remember my, honestly, like, you know, almost teary-eyed, I can remember being like, oh, and I remember screaming to my dad, like, oh my God, it works. Like, you know, we're good. So I played Prototype. And, okay, we have a lot of other games to talk about, so we're going to kind of go a little bit faster. I got to rush myself. No, Prototype became one of my favorite games of all time. I don't know if it defined me. I think maybe games more like Uncharted defined me, but Prototype was such a good game. It was everything I wanted. It wasn't even an example. You know, you think for putting everything on one game, everything rested on that one game, you would think like expectations would be too high. But here's the thing. I had never played games like that before. Playing a game like that, and we did not have good TVs. It was still the block TV at the time. I remember that because eventually, just a couple months later, I got Batman Arkham Asylum, and that game was also on the block TV. So we did not have a lot of money. We didn't really have the technology to even enhance what the PS3 could do, but I just remember looking at the TV and being like, oh my, this isn't Sly Cooper. Now, Sly Cooper has aged rather well in visuals, but I was like, oh my God, this is what future technology looks like. Truly, you know, you have the Wii, and I had played Super Mario Galaxy, and that game looked really good. You know, you play some pretty games, but to see the technology of the PS3 was unbelievable as a 12-year-old just about to be 13. So, okay, well, what happened then? Well, much like I think many people, right? When you're kids, when you're teenagers, you know, you don't have a lot of money, unless maybe, you know, your family has a lot of money. But generally, the stories that I've seen is like, well, you have a couple games and you just play them over and over again, right? Because you get games maybe for Christmas, maybe your birthday, and that's kind of it. And honestly, that was mine. That year for my birthday, I don't think I probably got gifts, but I don't think I got any PlayStation games because I remember running with or rolling with literally Resistance, MotorStorm, Prototype. Those were the three. And I got really into Resistance and I got really into Prototype. And I played Prototype probably more than, you know, the other two. Eventually we get to August and out comes Batman Arkham Asylum. And this one was kind of on a whim. I think I've told this story and I'll probably tell this story when I do because it's 15 years from Arkham Asylum as well. Saw the game, saw reviews, kind of bought it on a whim because of that stuff. It's one of the only times I've ever actually done that in my life. I'll detail it more in August, but get that game, and I'm just absolutely stunned by how amazing it is. But still, I mean, at that point in August, you're sitting with like 4 games, you know? Fast forward to that Christmas, and that Christmas I also think is kind of a... In fact, no, not kind of. That is a defining one. Now, I can't actually tell you. I got 7 games. I believe the actual number was 7. And I remember the lead up to it was, you know, again, budget wasn't very big for Christmas. You know, I have a sister, so the budget was also split between us, right? And my parents liked almost to give quantity instead of quality, right? Like, hey, you know, just so you have things to open, which I very much appreciate. And I kind of do that, you know, even with my daughter. But okay, going into Christmas, I said, I just want games. You know, I'm 13 and a half. I just want video games. I have the PS3. I don't have a lot of games. And they tell me, they say, well, you know, if you just write down games on like your list, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to be able to. And I said, it's okay. It's like, honestly. And it was a weird Christmas because, you know, you come down the stairs. I was on the second floor. Come down the stairs. I think they got me a couple Star Wars posters, like in big frames. So I did have like actual big things to see. But it was a stack. It was a stack and it was 7 games. And that's really all I got that Christmas. Now, games, you know, being $50-$60, maybe somewhere on discount. I mean, that was a lot of money and that literally was the budget, right? So I can't fault them. I can't recall any of those games besides one, and that is Uncharted 1. I got Uncharted 1, so that would have been Christmas of 2009. Now, at that point, Uncharted 2 was already out, right? And then Uncharted 3 was going to come out 2 years later. So I wasn't into Uncharted. I don't even know how I knew to write Uncharted on the list. Maybe Resistance 2 could have been one of those games. I definitely wasn't Heavy Rain. I think that was 2010, and that's coming up. But I get this stack. And I think from somebody else, I got like a gaming chair. If you guys remember those old-fashioned like speaker gaming chairs where you just kind of like lay on them, and they have the audio jacks. And I never actually used any of those audio audio jacks, but I would sit in that chair and just play games, on the floor, just looking up. So I had that, and I remember every day I would just go on a rotation. Every day I would just pick the next game, and Uncharted would come up. I'd play Uncharted. Next day I'd pick the next game over and over and over. And man, like, this is really where it started to me, I would say, right? Because Arkham Asylum, opened me up, I guess, again, just like Prototype did. But Uncharted became my favorite franchise. Now, I tend to go back and forth right now between Uncharted and Sly, and I had already, played all the Sly games, but Uncharted 1 was just an amazing, amazing game. And from this point forward, we can kind of just jump more around. I mean, look, why does it define me? Well, it's not even just the first-party games. I mean, the first-party games were the ones I think that stood out so much to me, but of course you got to recognize the third-party ones. But Heavy Rain, I remember, I did martial arts for my entire life, really, and I still do it, privately. I kind of teach myself. Heavy Rain was a game, and it's okay to say it now. It's been so many years. I actually skipped, martial arts, and I would teach, even though I was a younger teenager. I was pretty advanced, so I would help teach the kids. I ended up teaching adults, as I got older. So, but I actually just faked it and just said I'm not coming in or whatever. And it was actually, I don't think he liked me doing that, honestly. But it's okay. It's been long enough. I feel okay telling that story. But I skipped karate for that, for Heavy Rain. I remember playing God of War 3 with a very close friend, a lifelong friend of mine, and just the games kept coming. I mean, you had the Heavy Rains, you had the Beyond Two Souls. Beyond Two Souls I really liked, at the time. I still like it now. The Last of Us, The Last of Us coming right at the tail end really defined, I would say, maybe the PS3 generation, just in general. Fell in love with the Resistance series, got into and started to really enjoy Killzone, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I mean, they literally, even in the big named PlayStation exclusives, it never stopped, right? It literally never stopped. And then you also had smaller ones. I always bring up the game Puppeteer, which is one that I really want physically. I think it's like $60-$70, but Puppeteer I thought was a really great kind of under the radar. Tokyo Jungle is one I always remember. I didn't like it, but it was, I think one was called Rain. There was a couple. There was a couple out there that were really interesting games. But then you have everything else. I mean, when I think, like I mentioned in the beginning, when you think to Assassin's Creed, when you think to BioShock, when you think to Borderlands, when you think anything, you think to the year, right now we're doing a lot of 15-year-old celebrations, right? You think to Brutal Legend, you think to Arkham, right? All of these games I experienced through the PS3, all of them. Now I would experience Xbox games, Alan Wake, I've told that story before, Alan Wake, Halo, Gears, I'd experienced that through friends. My close friends, as I said, they had 360. My cousin and I had PS3, and that's how I would sleep over at their houses quite often. So that's how I got my Halo fix. That's how I rented Alan Wake quite a bit. But it was a time of my life, and yes, you're growing into it, right? I'm just learning about gaming. You get into Mass Effect, and Mass Effect's the greatest thing of all time. Kingdom Hearts had already done its thing, and it was all scattered everywhere, and eventually came to a lot of handhelds and stuff, right? So Kingdom Hearts was really maybe one of the first games besides Crash. Crash was probably the first game that defined me in terms of me even playing a video game was Crash. Eventually came Kingdom Hearts, games here and there, Sims, things like that, Sly Cooper. But the PS3, so many first-party games that eventually just became favorites of mine, right? Thieves in Time, I guess. There's so many of them. And then third parties, you think of a franchise that was just around during the PS3 time, whether it started there, Assassin's Creed, I think, was 2007, right? So that did start in that generation. All of those games, at least a lot of them, did start in the PS3 360 gen, and then they still, aren't done with right now. So, yeah, I just have so many memories with it. Of course, the trophies and getting platinums. I can go through smaller ones, I don't even know it was Velocity 2X on PS3 or PS4, but that's a cult classic for me. Of course, you had the PlayStation outage, which I think that was during PS3. Yeah, because remember, it was down for a month, and I remember listening to Podcast Beyond at the time, and oh my God, what a freaking disaster, that was. And you get free games for it when they came back. It was such an interesting time. Rock Band, Green Day Rock Band specifically for me, unbelievable. I mean, really so many of my memories, besides the big flare-ups. When you think of Kingdom Hearts, when you think of Sly, when you think of Crash, when you think of Sims, Mario, things like that. Besides that, I mean, those are a lot. That's a lot. But besides that, 80% of my knowledge and stuff, at least at the time, was all coming through PS3. And even nowadays, I have such a collection. I've tried to talk about it, show it off to you as much as I can, not in like an ego way. It's just I'm proud of the collection I'm building. And I actually found this app actually through Mr. Matty Plays, right? He posted it, called Game Eye, and you basically scan all the barcodes and it just keeps like an aggregate of everything you have. And a PS3 is my most collected. Now, I've gotten more games since then, a lot more games than I had back then. But, still, PS3 has, I think, at least 30 more games than the next closest, which might be 360, just because I'm collecting so many 360 games. So, PS3, even from the physical collection, and games like Puppeteer, I had digitally. Games like Walking Dead, which also might have been on PS3. Wolf Among Us would have been on PS3, right? Like all the Telltale stuff. And games that maybe I did just get digitally. I probably had several digital games only. But you can even tell in the physical collection how much the PS3, has meant to me. So I love it. I've said it before, and I genuinely mean it. There's a biasness there, as you can now tell from my life story, but PS3 is my favorite generation. It's also, I think, the best generation. And I'm not saying just PS3. Let's say PS3 360, right? Literally that gen of consoles, because you have the Alan Wakes of the world and you have Halo continuing and stuff like that. I don't think Xbox was all that strong from, again, I get in 2009. I think really Uncharted 2 came out in 2009. So did Gears 2, though. From 2009 really onward, remember, PS3 started really bad, really slow. They thought they were kings, right? They thought they were better than everybody. The pricing was too high. There was not enough high-quality games for the system when the system launched. The PS3 launch was a disaster. And I mean, you think the Xbox One launch is a disaster. PS3 was a disaster. I didn't know any of that, right? Like, none of it. I knew it as, this big thing, we have the PS2. Oh, look at this fat PlayStation. It runs prototype. That, and I want to make, I know it's kind of late for me to throw this out in the video. I want to hear from you guys because, when I think of getting a console, right, especially even nowadays, I feel like it's got to be a collection of games that bring you in, not one in particular. At least that's me. I don't know how that is for everybody. I also want to know, how rare is it for somebody to get the console for a game that's not even exclusive to that console. You know what I mean? And I don't know if I'm weird for that. I did have a choice. I remember, again, I was 12. I think, so I was I might have been in middle school. Yeah, it would have been 7th grade, end of 7th grade, I believe. So I'm in middle school. My friends, my lifelong friends, we split schools for 5th and 6th grade, and then we came back for middle school. I remember them trying to pitch me to get the 360. I remember there being like a week or two long process where I would text my cousin and he would just PS3, and they would say 360, and I chose PS3. Don't really know why, because I talked to my friends more than I talked to my cousin. That kind of changed a little bit over those next couple years, but at the time, I had a choice to make, to get 360 or to get PS3. So it not necessarily like a console warrior thing, but I wanted prototype, and actually that's the least console warrior thing I think you can do. You know what I mean? I got it for a third-party game. I didn't even know what Uncharted was, or Infamous. Like, I heard about the Infamous prototype debate, so I did know what Infamous was, but not like, massively, not like I do now for all of these tens of thousands of games I talk about, right? I didn't know any of that stuff. So I literally got it for a third-party game that I easily could have just got prototype on 360. It would have made literally no difference. Trophies, I mean, they didn't matter to me back then. Getting it for Uncharted versus Gears, that didn't matter to me. I literally got it to run prototype, and my cousin kind of just convinced me, and the rest truly is history. Like, if that didn't happen, I don't know. Like, would I still have gotten those third-party games? I think so. I would hope so. But, games like the Heavy Rains and Uncharted's and Infamous, Resistance, Killzone, Beyond, PlayStation All-Stars, eventually would lead into Gravity Rush and Last of Us and so many more. PlayStation was cooking in that time frame, and I feel like I got in right as it got good. Like 2009, right when it started to heat up. Because before 2009, I don't know how hot it was. I don't know how impressive or impressed people were with PS3 at the time. I was more than fine. I was thinking, hey, I'm good with Arkham and I'm good with Prototype. I mean, Resistance, this is a cool thing. Motorstorm is a cool thing. Are there even other games, at that point? And yeah, over time, I started to get more and more and more into it, listening to podcasts beyond. I read a lot of IGN. You know, it actually hurts me that IGN's become just a shell of its former self, because it was the site, and it was the site that got me into gaming through just reading all these articles and all these reviews, and Colin Moriarty and Greg Miller and all of them. So that's another side story, I suppose. But there you go. There's my story with the PS3. Freaking love it. The best console, the best console, I would say, period. More than even that generation, but also a huge part in what made that generation the absolute best. And I had so many renting stories we've talked about. That's how I played like the Transformers games or games like Brutal Legend. I did GameFly back then. I got Layer, through GameFly, and returned it pretty quickly. Played it for like half a day. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, I got on PS3, rented it, returned it the next day because I beat it in one day. Hundreds of games. True, I believe that over the length of time. I mean, maybe 5 years, right? Until the PS4 came out. 5 years, 5.5 years. Not only did I try to get what was new, but I also had to handle the games that I had missed out on, the 2 previous years, from first party to third party. So many games that really defined me as a gamer on the PS3. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I thought, it literally has been 15 years, not just for Prototype's anniversary or Infamous, but 15 years for me, having the PS3, and really, I think, becoming a gamer, if I wasn't that, I guess, before it. But I wanted to share that with you. So you let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.